it's common practice to spay or neuter your pets, but how early should you take care of this? Dr. Ruth Roberts is with Sun Dog Cat Moon Veterinary Clinic, and she is here with the pros and cons of spay neuter. And you and I were talking during the break, and there is a huge significant difference between different breeds and when they should be spay and neutered. Let's talk about first about how early should you spay or neuter your pet?
Well, Tom, traditionally we've recommended spaying and neutering somewhere around 6 months of age. And certainly with the animal societies, and the Charleston Animal Society has done a phenomenal job at helping reduce the pet overpopulation problem. They took us from an area where we were euthanizing 35 to 40,000 animals a year because they didn't have homes to a place where we have a no-kill Charleston, and that's amazing. But it's a double-edged sword. So it's not that spaying and neutering shouldn't happen, but you know, if you've adopted your pet from one of these animal societies, it's what it is. So it's what we can do really to support these guys afterwards.
Let's define first spay and neuter, because a lot of times people say, well, I'm just fixing my cat or my dog so that they won't have or breed anymore.
Exactly, and that's kind of it. I mean, that certainly sterilization is the primary objective of spaying and neutering, but spaying is literally removing both the ovaries and the uterus, whereas with women that have a hysterectomy, it's only the uterus. So the ovaries, which produce the sex hormones, stay intact. For males, it's removing the testes, and again, we're removing the ability to produce most of the sex hormones. So that's what it is in a nutshell, and that's where the issue comes in, because there are benefits to keeping the sex hormones as far as keeping the physiology more normal, preventing things like joint issues, so hip dysplasia, cruciate ruptures in dogs and cats, which happens much less often. But, and then the other things that it shows benefit for is protecting against certain types of cancer. So the really yucky stuff, lymphomas, hemangiosarcomas, mast cell tumors. But there's a big difference between breeds. So we were talking about the difference between golden retrievers and Labradors, for instance. There were two studies from University of California, Davis, that showed that intact golden retrievers had a much lower incidence of all joint disease and a much lower incidence of certain types of cancer.
Let's stay with the golden retriever.
Sure.
So where is the time element? Where's the date? What is the age at where you can spay or neuter, let's say, a golden retriever?
Well, the interesting thing was in the study, after a year of age, offered more protection.
Okay.
But it's difficult. That's not our culture, it is to have intact pets anymore. And again, if you've adopted from the Animal Society trying to be doing the right thing in the community, that's not an option. So again, it comes down to what can we do to support these guys later.
And you're talking about the different cancers that can occur if you spay or neuter at too young an age.
Right. So at too young of an age, you're going to prevent breast cancer in females and prostate cancer in males, but you have an increased incidence of lymphoma, hemangiosarcoma, and mast cell tumors, which are really nasty cancers.
Now with, how about with shepherds and so forth? Because I noticed there, the lower portion of the shepherd, or the back haunches, so to speak, they have some difficulty. Is that sometimes because of early spay or neutered?
There is some association with that. And in fact, there's another paper from a fellow at the University of Purdue University rather, that works with the Life Extension Institute there for people, and he's used dogs as his model for us. And what he's found with Rottweilers, which is another breed that has a huge predisposition to hip dysplasia, which often affects many breeds in the rear end, their incidence of hip dysplasia and cancers went down tremendously, and they lived much longer, especially for the female dogs, up to 13, which is ancient for a Rottweiler.
And with the hip dysplasia, this goes into another part of your practice where an animal can come in with hip dysplasia, and sometimes with just a small amount of treatments can get away from that, correct?
Well, we can reduce the discomfort they're experiencing and help make them stronger as well. And really that's kind of the goal here, is to help these guys, even though we've got a pet that may have been spayed or neutered as early as 6 to 8 weeks of age, help support them through their lives so that we help avoid those diseases. And so feeding great quality foods, the original crock-pot diet if you can home cook for your pet, and then using supplements to support the adrenal glands in particular and maintain muscle. these are things that all prevent these diseases from happening later in life.
We just have a few seconds left.
Sure.
There's sort of a gray area then, sort of a catch-22, if you will, of what do you do with the pet before that time that you can spay or neuter it? You just kind of keep it away from other pets?
That's exactly it. And so we're answering questions that I haven't answered in 20 years. So that's the difficulty, is that if you've got an intact male or a female dog, more importantly, during that heat cycle for the female, you just have to put her in lockdown.
Wow.
And with male dogs, that was a big thing we used to see, was lots of dogs that had been hit by cars because they're out roaming, dog fights, things of that nature. So it's important to just keep them confined and on a leash if possible.
Where are you located, Doctor?
We're out on Johns Island.
Johns Island.
Come see
Sundog
us.
Cat Moon, yes ma'am, we sure will. 2908 Maybank Highway. Always a pleasure, Doctor.
Indeed. Thanks so much,
Thank
Tom.
you so much.
Cheers.
Stay with us. We've got more coming up in just a moment with Trial Tuesday and attorney David Ayler.